Monday, March 8th, 2026, and welcome to another episode of From the Press Box on the Right Team podcast, where we discuss and break down the local and national sports headlines of the day from our neck of the Piney Woods here in East Texas. I'm David Weaver, host of the Right Team podcast, and I'm joined today, as always, by my good friend, my co-host, and local pastor, Matt Paul, who also serves as the sports director of KMHT 103.9 FM, in Marshall, Texas, the heartbeat of East Texas. Matt, I know it's been a busy weekend for you with all your pastoral duties out there at Friendship, but I got to give you some props, man, for the work you did on your NCAA bracket predictions this weekend.
It's fun. Don't get a lot of Saturdays that are pretty low key, but kind of had one of those. And if anybody can hear, allergies have kind of taken over. I was singing bass in church yesterday, but so kind of laid low a little bit Saturday, but that was a good excuse to watch a lot of basketball. Of course, a lot of basketball yesterday too. It was fun to put it together. Excited to reveal it.
Well, there's a lot of basketball that's really right now going to be taking place every day for the next month in some form or fashion, which we're going to get to here in just a second. That leads us right into our on-campus portion of the broadcast today, which is brought to you by East Texas Baptist University. ETBU combines strong academics, championship-level athletics, and a Christ-centered mission that influences every part of campus life. If you're searching for a university where faith, competition, and community matter, discover Life on the Hill in Marshall, Texas. Visit etbu.edu to learn more. Okay, let's get right to it. As we have promised for the last week or so, Matt is going to reveal his first men's tournament bracket as far as he sees it from his bracketology. And he has delivered, as we've said. I know we worked all day Saturday and well into the night on Sunday as well. Of course, NCAA Selection Sunday is coming up this Sunday, and while there some questions have been decided rather decisively, I know there are many still up in the air. A lot of questions heading into championship week, which will answer some of those, but especially. Man, as you've mentioned, this is one of the softest bubbles that we've seen in recent years. Give us some clarity with your bracket on all of this early madness.
Well, and if you'll do me a favor, tell me what I know as we go along. You're going to throw up some graphics with stuff. So just let me know what you're putting up, because you're the one putting that up, so I can kind of speak to it.
We're going to go left to right as we're seeing it in our document, which I believe is the East bracket. So just throw that one up there first and tell us what you think about that, how you got to that, and then we'll just go south, Midwest, and West.
Okay, so the East bracket, Duke right now is the overall number one seed, and I want to be clear, this is a razor thin margin between them and Michigan. Duke and Michigan both are really neck and neck, and if Michigan wins the Big Ten tournament, Michigan may very well overtake Duke for the number one seed. Overall, they're both going to be number ones, but so we start in the East bracket, and that's where Duke's going to go. If you don't know how the brackets work, there's an East, there's a South, there's a Midwest, and a West, and so right now, with the way the number one seeds have fallen, Duke's going to be in the East, Michigan's going to be in the Midwest, Arizona's going to be out West, Florida, who is new to the number one seed line, is going to be in the South. But looking at this East bracket, what stands out to me, and you'll notice this, I've kind of you and I've talked about this kind of back and forth, but Arkansas and Kansas have flip-flopped 4 and 5 seeds in my bracket. Margins are really razor thin on some of these 3, 4, and 5 setups. There's teams like Alabama, Virginia, Purdue, Texas Tech that are kind of 3, 4, maybe. I don't know. And then there's teams like Arkansas, Kansas, Vanderbilt that are maybe 4 or 5. So it's kind of making your best projection. I went with Arkansas, not because they're my favorite. But because a road win over Missouri without your All-American was pretty impressive to me. And so they are the 4. But what you see here is there's a location you'll see. For example, Duke is going to get the winner of Howard and Lehigh. And then Utah State and Georgia are going to play. And those games are going to take place in Greenville, South Carolina. And it's not until you get to the Sweet 16, which is kind of the light green and then moving into the yellow, that you'll go out to Washington, D.C. for the regional. So Duke will be with Georgia and Utah State in Greenville. Kansas and Arkansas will be in Oklahoma City, and you see their matchups there. High Point and Utah Valley are pretty high level 12 and 13s. Those are going to be tough ones. They have not clinched yet. High Point is in their conference championship. Utah Valley, I don't think their conference championship has begun yet. So we will see. In St. Louis, boy, I thought this one was fascinating. Iowa State, Wisconsin, and Missouri all playing in St. Louis. You want to talk about some fans that are going to be there. I think that would be really interesting. And then kind of the same way down there in the last one with Michigan State and Villanova potentially meeting in the second round in Buffalo, New York. But one team to kind of note there, Central Florida as a 10 seed. Central Florida's in a bit of a free fall. They lost their last 3 games, none of them to top teams in the Big 12. So I think they're safe, but they would do well not to bow out in the first round of their conference tournament. The same can be said for Missouri, the 11 seed there.
I want to speak about Kansas here for just a second. You know, we have kind of gone back the last couple of weeks, you and I, me in particular, kind of being out on them. I did speak to my Kansas source yesterday after church, and he's not worried about them per se. He's just really frustrated, as he says most Kansas fans are, because those folks know basketball, right?
Yeah.
They do know basketball, and I'll give him that. He says that the general consensus and why it's so frustrating for them is that they feel like they have a team that is a Final Four team.
Yeah.
That has vastly underperformed all season long. And I've gone back and forth as to why those reasons are, but he assured me that they would not lose their first round game. He's looking more toward the round of 32, Sweet 16. If they're going to get tripped up, that's when it's going to happen. He says, but watch out if they get past that. Because they do have the talent. I think we understand they do have the talent to go and be as good as anybody in the country. Just haven't shown it consistently this year. So that's just a little, picking that up a little bit from our discussion last week on our worries about Kansas. But I think I agree with you. I think you have them in the perfect spot. I think they're a 5 seed.
And it would be curious if this bracket was correct and it was Arkansas and Kansas potentially meeting in the second round, because last year they met in the first round. Arkansas won. 3 years ago, I believe it was, Arkansas was the 8 and Kansas was the 1, and they met in the second round and Arkansas upset them. Not only that, last year Kansas's season ended in Fayetteville at the Arkansas Regional in baseball. And about 4 years ago, we met in a bowl game in football, and Arkansas beat Kansas in overtime. I don't know that Kansas is really interested in playing Arkansas in the postseason. It's just kind of a funny thing how it's worked out of late. But anyway, that would be, boy, Arkansas and Kansas meeting in Oklahoma City. That would be wild.
Yes. Yeah. That would be one of those you really would want to be in attendance for if you could get a ticket. I don't think you could get a ticket.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, good stuff there on the East. That is your prediction as we stand here on Monday. And again, I believe Matt has said that you will be looking to update this or tweaking it somewhat as the week goes on, to where when we get to Sunday, we'll see if you match exactly or get pretty close to what the actual bracket looks like. But good work there on the East. Let's move on to the South, where I see you have Florida as your number 1 seed. So you have elevated the Gators from the SEC into that number 1 seed.
Yeah. Rough loss for UConn against a pretty bad Marquette team. And Florida took care of business in Rupp Arena. Florida is rocket hot right now. I mean, they are just so good. So they get upgraded to the number 1. Connecticut falls down to the number 2. And in fact, I had to make a late tweak on this because I actually would rate Houston as my top number 2. but I had to double check the rules, and I still need to. I don't think Houston can be the 2 in the South because the regional is in Houston. And I think technically they're the host of that regional. You know, every location has a quote unquote school host. So I'd have to double check that. But Connecticut's the 2 here. You know, notable things here. You see Florida will get to play in Tampa, Florida. UCLA is really hot. They're an 8. I elevated Miami of Ohio to a 9. And so you see that here. I don't know that they'll get a 9. I feel like they might be more likely a 10. We'll have to see how they do in the MAC tournament. I also don't know that the committee will want to put them to where a number 1 seed has to play an undefeated team potentially in the second round. I think that could be a little odd, but that's just where they fell. But UCLA is hot right now. Virginia.
Are you giving them, I'm assuming you're giving them the automatic bid from the MAC here?
Yeah. That the assumption there is that they will be the automatic bid. Now, I do believe Miami of Ohio has done enough that if they do not win the MAC tournament, they will still get in, which means we've got, and we can talk about this a little bit later, we've got a bid thief. Somebody on the bubble is going to get bumped because Miami of Ohio is going to stay in and the MAC champion will move in. But that's going on in Tampa, in Greenville, South Carolina. And this was funny how it fell. Virginia versus Liberty. I mean, that's an in-state battle right there taking place in South Carolina, and then also St. John's there. Oddly enough, St. John's is the regular season Big East champion. Don't know if you knew that. They moved past Connecticut with what happened there. Moving on to Portland, where Nebraska takes on Wright State. That's the 3 seed. And then how about the battle for your Longhorns against the Tar Heels? Number 6 versus, it is number 6 versus number 11. Texas, rough loss at home against Oklahoma. You know, the loss to Arkansas on Wednesday didn't really hurt Texas. I don't think anybody expected that going into Fayetteville, but that loss was rough. They would do well. I believe they open with, is it Ole Miss that Texas opens with in
to play Ole Miss Wednesday?
Yeah. They would do well not to lose that one. I think if they win that one, they're probably okay no matter what happens with Georgia in the second.
They've actually got the easy, by that loss, they've actually got the easier bracket, the way it lines up to get to at least the semifinals. Before they would have to even consider, I think, seeing Florida. They may not see Florida until the finals if they were to get there. But
right, yeah, they would have to navigate Georgia and Alabama to get to the semis, assuming they beat Ole Miss. And then down in Philadelphia, you've got Connecticut, you've got Miami and Ohio State, a 7-10 battle there. Connecticut playing Queens, and I don't know if you saw this, but Queens College yesterday defeated Central Arkansas, University of Central Arkansas, in a great overtime game between 2 teams who've never been to the tournament. And Central Arkansas had a young man, Cameron Hunter, who scored the final 20 points of the game for UCA. Finished regulation with 43, finished the game with like 46 or 48, but Queens came up with the victory. So that's their first ever tournament bid. Congrats to them. And I've got them going to play UConn in Philadelphia. But that is your South bracket. And the winner of this bracket will match up with the winner of the East bracket in the Final Four.
Right, moving on to the Midwest.
Midwest bracket. Here's your Michigan Wolverines. And it's funny, Michigan is geographically closer to Buffalo for their host site, but I have heard from some pretty reputable sources that Michigan wants to play in Philadelphia. And when you're one of the top teams overall, you're probably going to get what you want. So that's why I have that there. Clemson and TCU are the 8-9. This is where we got Texas Tech as a 4 and Vanderbilt as a 5. And you'll notice that the way it sort of fell, Texas Tech and Stephen F. Austin, if they win the Southland, that would be an interesting battle there. Also, Northern Iowa came out of the Missouri Valley. That was where we had Belmont, who was kind of shocked in the first round of the Missouri Valley. Northern Iowa, that might be a little bit of a nightmare memory from you from the last time they were in the tournament. Beat Texas on a half-court shot at the buzzer. It was a wild game, crazy game. Out in Portland, Gonzaga and BYU, formerly in the same conference, potentially on a crash course. We see our first matchup of the Final Four to get in, Virginia Commonwealth and SMU battling in a play-in game for the right to play BYU. Gonzaga, a tough 14 seed, North Dakota State, not far from Portland out there. That would be an interesting one. And then, we talked about Arkansas and Kansas both being in Oklahoma City. Well, look at that. How about Kentucky and Houston? Oklahoma City could have Arkansas, Kansas, Kentucky, and Houston in the same regional. Not the same regional, but the same in the same location. Boy, that would be a hard ticket to find right there if those four teams end up going there.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at this regional final here, which potentially could be Houston against Michigan in Chicago. I'd pay money to watch that.
Yeah. That would be really
It's a pay-per-view kind of game. Okay. Looks good there on your Midwest bracket. And again, I'm fascinated with a couple of teams here that I'm going to be watching in my own personal bracket, no matter where they land, and that's Houston and Florida. That's the ones I'm going to be watching and probably putting all my eggs in those two baskets for the most part, unless something crazy happens this week. All right, let's close it out here with the West bracket.
All right, West bracket, that's where Arizona is, number one, the Big 12 champs. Arizona has been, really over the course of the whole season, it's Duke, Michigan, and Arizona. Those are the three beasts. Now, Florida has probably inserted themselves into that conversation after some early hiccups, including losses to Arizona and UConn. But Arizona has been just lights out. They'll be out in San Diego. Iowa and St. Louis are the 8-9 potential matchup there. Out in Buffalo, you got Purdue, who is I don't know what to do with Purdue. I could see them as a 3. Their metrics are still really good, but they just keep accumulating losses. Do you know Purdue is the 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament? It's kind of hard to believe, but I got them as a 4. Tennessee up there. Boy, Tennessee drawing Yale. I tell you, every 5 seed just hopes they get the Ivy League school, right? That's always scary. Here was one, and
Rick Barnes special waiting to happen right there.
For sure. This is where I kind of take a stab. I just did a little bit of a deep dive this week into Alabama, and I bumped them up to a 3. Alabama, and that may not be correct. I don't know for sure, but I was looking at Alabama's resume. They're the number 2 seed in the SEC. They went 13-5. But I just kind of wanted to share with you a little bit. I don't know if you were aware of Alabama's non-conference schedule. They beat St. John's. They lost to Purdue. They beat Illinois. They lost to Gonzaga. They also beat Clemson. They lost to Arizona. They beat South Florida, who is the class of the American Conference. They beat Yale by 24 points, who we just said is the class of the Ivy League. That's a really good non-conference schedule, and they really got a lot of wins there. So I bumped Alabama up to the 3. Interesting matchup there with Louisville as the 6. You notice here's my other play-in, the first 4 games. Santa Clara, who got a win last night against Indiana, who's holding on for dear life. And then down in St. Louis, Illinois, the 2 seed. They'll love playing in St. Louis. And they'll be joined by St. Mary's and Texas A&M in the 7-10. Texas A&M avoided the dark side of the bubble by the skin of their teeth in a triple overtime win over LSU. But at 11-7 in the SEC, I feel pretty safe about Texas A&M. But that means that out there in St. Louis, you could potentially have Iowa State, Wisconsin, Missouri, and Illinois all out there in St. Louis. That's another hot ticket right there. But that's kind of where we are. Excuse me. It's kind of where we are on on the West bracket. And one thing to note, I mentioned that Santa Clara is one of the last ones in. They got a win last night, which now sets it up to where the West Coast Conference semifinals, which I believe may be tonight. I'm bringing that up right now. The West Coast Conference, yeah, the semifinals are tonight. It's Oregon State, Gonzaga, and Santa Clara and St. Mary's. Why is that important? As long as Oregon State doesn't win that tournament, you avoid a bid thief. And that's what's really important there. So Santa Clara defeated a bid thief last night. As long as Oregon State doesn't win that, bubble teams can breathe a little bit easier, because right now Santa Clara, St. Mary's, and Gonzaga all are would-be tournament teams.
All right. Well, that's good stuff, brother. And again, these things could change based on, I know there's a few of these teams that could go up or down a little bit based on their performances in their conference tournaments. I'll be fascinated to see ultimately who ends up being the number one seed. I agree with you there. It's a race right now between Duke and Michigan. Michigan, I mean, probably, would you agree, has the tougher road in the Big Ten tournament, just in terms of overall talent?
No, yeah, there's no question about that. In fact, I feel
so
like
I guess we could probably see maybe even if Duke wins the ACC, Michigan could run the table in the Big Ten and jump them, right?
I mean, I think that's very, very possible. I'm curious to see that. I'm also really curious, and let me ask you, are you able to bring up that tab, the bubble tab?
Yes.
If you'll bring that up, because this is kind of my best guess, my stab at, where we are on the bubble. And so you see, in my take, if you're a 9 seed right now, you're safe. You're not going to be eliminated no matter what happens. And probably if you're a 10 seed. So if you look at that bubble tab, I think Miami of Ohio and Texas A&M are definitely safe. I think NC State and Central Florida are reasonably safe, but it would be good to not mess around. But you see, you start wondering, who are the teams that could work their way in? And the first 4 out, they're labeled, their seed there's labeled FFO. You see Auburn, Cincinnati, New Mexico, and San Diego State. Those are the teams that I'm really watching closely. Some teams that had some significant wins, though, over the weekend. West Virginia, Stanford, and Oklahoma had some really, really big wins. Now, look, it's not enough to just launch them in because Oklahoma beat Texas, or West Virginia beat Central Florida, or Stanford beat North Carolina State. But it's enough to, in a soft bubble where teams just keep saying, we don't really want to get in, we're going to keep losing. It's enough to say, hey, if we can get hot and win a couple in a row, watch out for us. So this is, to me, the most fascinating part of this is how teams play on the bubble getting into conference tournament action. So that's just a little bit of a picture there of who's still alive and who's trying to hang on for dear life.
Yeah, and you mentioned Oklahoma. That was a big win for them, of course, on the road Saturday against my Horns. And I was really feeling good about Texas being a kind of a sleeper team, maybe that no one would want to see going into the tournament. Now, I'm based off of Sean Miller's comments after that game. I'm not so sure he even believes it. It's just kind of a, defensively they're a mess, and it's too late in the season. You really can't fix something like that. I mean, that's a team problem. And so he's just he needs another recruiting class or two to be able to kind of get what he wants in there. So who knows? I mean, they've shown they can play and beat anybody, but they've also shown that they can be upset on their own home floor when they need to win.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so, very big question mark for Texas going into that. And I agree, Oklahoma has put itself at least in consideration for those first four teams that, I don't know if you call them first 4, last 4 that make it in for the playoffs. So, but anyway, good stuff there again. And again, we'll probably around Thursday or so, I'm guessing you'll be able to maybe update this or let us know if there's been any massive changes to the bracket. But I would put this up against anybody's right now. I mean, based on your methodology, I think it's right on point.
Well, and I think we can take, and not that I want to do a full breakdown every day, but I think if there's like tonight, there may be some shifts, there's going to be some new teams that clinch a spot. And if you notice on the S curve, I added a nice bright green color code for those teams are now in. They're no longer my prediction to get in or who's leading their conference. Those teams have secured their spot.
Good deal. Good deal. We'll switch over to the women's part of the NCAA tournament coming up. They do have March Madness as well. And, of course, their conference tournaments ended over the weekend pretty much all across the country. Very few, what I would say, big-time upsets, at least at the higher levels. You did have some mild ones between some lower-ranked teams knocking off some higher-ranked teams, particularly in the Big 12, West Virginia beating TCU. In the Big 12 championship game. So, but they were really only separated by a game in the standings. That's really not that big of an upset to me. Also a mild upset here. Number 13, Duke knocks off number 12, Louisville in the ACC tournament final. But other than that, I mean, Matt, it's pretty, it's the ladies pretty much held serve going, really with their bracketology. If you compare it there, although the bracketology, nothing's really changed much. Other than my Texas Lady Horns, of course, just really racing past South Carolina. This game really wasn't as close, even as the final 17-point margin made it look to be. The Horns jumped out from the opening tip, ran out a 27-12 advantage in the first quarter, and never looked back. Very impressive win for Texas there in the SEC final. And so, of course, that is my backdrop here today. Technically, we're not in a press box here, but man, when the Horns win a conference championship, you have to light the tower. So we have the tower lit behind us here, of course. Beautiful sight as always. So again, the ladies now pretty much take a week off, and their bracket will be released on a Sunday as well. Really the only change that you can see if you look at bracketology is that Texas has jumped South Carolina and taken that all-important 3 seed. Which means that they can really take care of business in Austin and then have the regional final, semifinals, and Elite 8 there in Fort Worth. So would never have to leave the state of Texas to get to the Final Four. That's a huge advantage for Texas potentially.
Yeah, that would be really, really good. Really impressive tournament. I mean, we've talked about the depth and the high level of basketball in the SEC for a good bit on this podcast. So really impressive tournament win there. And you're right. It's kind of weird. We mostly have little conferences left to fill it in. Most of the big conferences are done. Really great ACC final yesterday between Louisville and Duke. Or I can't remember if it was Saturday or yesterday, but one thing of note, there are some games today. The Big East final is this evening. UConn and Villanova. Best of luck, Villanova. Villanova, really good year. They're 25-6. But kind of an underrated conference final tonight at 5:00 in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. Fairfield and Quinnipiac. Fairfield's number 25 in the nation, and we've looked at bracketology, they appear on the first 4 out or next 4 out a lot. This is a battle of 2 teams that are 27-4 and 26-5 in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. And we talked a little bit about tournament expansion last week, and of course my whole thing on it is if we're going to expand it, I want it to where Fairfield and Quinnipiac both get in, not just one of them. When you do that well, I think I don't know. To have 2 teams that have combined for 53 wins playing in a conference final this evening, and it's not out of the SEC or the ACC or some big conference like that. I just think that's pretty cool, and it's an underrated matchup. But just wanted to make mention of that.
Yeah, and I was looking at bracketology here, which was updated last night, so it's pretty much up to the minute. They have Texas, of course, in Region 3, which is the Fort Worth region. Interestingly enough, they have Oklahoma as the 4 seed in that same region. So technically,
Wow.
the Sooners and the Horns could meet in the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
They're in Fort Worth. So that would be kind of like a Red River rivalry type thing right there in Fort Worth, Texas and Oklahoma, right? So
For
it would be
sure.
an interesting matchup if those two teams advance. But yes, the women's basketball is winding down as well and gearing up for March Madness next week. Okay, just wanted to, before we close out our on-campus section here today, wanted to kind of review some action going on at ETBU. Of course, ETBU is, again, our sponsor of this segment of the podcast. They had a big weekend out in Georgia for ETBU softball. They go out there, of course, and come home with a 12-2 overall mark. Took a couple of losses there, including a big one on Sunday to top-ranked Trine there. The Tigers are down 3-0 going into the fifth inning, scored 3 in the top of the fifth, and then watched as Trine took control of the game there with a big uprising in the fifth inning and multi-run there. I believe they scored 6 runs in the fifth, and came away with a 9-4 win. But ETBU leaves that tournament with a overall 4-2 mark in the three-day tournament.
Yeah, and I feel like you have to feel good about that. I mean, it really was one bad inning, which that happens in baseball and softball. The first day they battled two teams who were basically in the backyard of that tournament, two Georgia teams with Emory and Barry. They were number 13 and number 23, and you come out with a split there. I feel like you got to feel good about that. And the three teams they played that were not ranked, they did what you would want to see them do. First of all, they're not ranked, but let's not kid ourselves. These are nationally reputable programs, even if they weren't ranked. You don't get invited to this tournament in Georgia without being a nationally reputable program. And ETBU boat raced all three of those teams. So yes. I thought there's no reason to look at a 4-2 week and think anything other than that was a good weekend for ETBU softball.
On the baseball side, the Tigers went up to Oregon and took 2 out of 3 from Pacific Oregon up there, despite you talk about a heartbreaking loss on Friday. You're going to look at the box score of this one. So the game was scoreless going into the 6th inning. ETBU jumps out to a 1-0 lead in the 6th. Then Pacific turns around, takes a lead in the bottom of the 6th to go up 2-2. Tigers tie it up in the top of the 7th. So we're tied at 2 going into the 8th inning. ETBU takes a 3-2 lead in the top of the 8th. Pacific jumps them. And so they go up 4-3 in the bottom of the 8th. And then the 9th inning happened. Tigers put up 4 to go up 7-4 in that one, go into the bottom of the 9th. And what does Pacific do? They answer with 4 as well, come away with an 8-7 win over ETBU in the opener of that series on Friday night. What a wild game that took place up there. But, ETBU jumps back on Saturday. And again, we've all been there. If you've ever been associated with a baseball team that loses a tough one like that, you can really tell the mettle of your team in the game coming up after that. And sometimes it's really good to have that game coming up and kind of wash that out. Well, they did exactly. They took a 17-4 win and kind of avenged that loss, and then followed that up with a 10-7 win in the nightcap on Saturday to get out of there by winning 2 out of 3. So that was a big road trip series win for Coach Jared Hood and his Tigers. They improved to 9-6 in the season.
I texted associate head coach Tanner Matthews afterward. I was like, man, that's a gutsy performance. The Friday night game was, I don't know, I was keeping up with it play-by-play, and both teams, Pacific had to feel horrible about their top of the 9th because I felt like they sort of, to an extent, gifted ETBU some of those runs, which, hey, I didn't care. I was rooting for the Tigers, so I didn't care. And then Pacific turns around and scores 4 in the bottom of the 9th. They only had 1 hit in that inning. There were a lot of walks. There were a lot of passed balls. So, you really felt like, if you're the Tigers, you felt like you gave one away, and to respond the way they did. And let's be clear about it. That win on Saturday night was an extra inning win, the one that clinched the series. They had to rally to get it to extra innings and then scored 3 in the top of the 10th. So I just thought that was a really impressive performance. And I texted that to Coach Matthews, and he said, thank you. He goes, I really think we might have turned a corner. I felt like that's a good weekend. Pacific's a good program out there in Oregon. I thought that was, to walk away with 2 out of 3, you got to feel good about that.
I always like to hear when your coach says, I think we turned a corner. They see something that they were looking for, and they saw it. And it always pretends usually that your team is definitely well, they've turned the corner, right? They're heading in the right direction. So good stuff there for ETBU all around on baseball and softball over the weekend. Once again, I want to thank East Texas Baptist University for sponsoring our on-campus segment here every day on the Right Team podcast from the press box. All right, let's move on to Beast Texas here. This segment is once again sponsored by Stiles Electric, proudly serving East Texas from offices in Longview and Mount Pleasant. Stiles Electric has provided reliable, professional electrical services for over a quarter century. For quality workmanship and trusted experience, choose Stiles Electric and service that speaks for itself. All right, Matt, we're down to the state semifinals on the boys' side. We do have a couple of our teams that we've been following in our area that will be competing this evening for a shot to go to San Antonio for a state championship. One of those is in the 2A D1 Region 3 ranks, where San Augustine will be taking on Hearn tonight at 6:30 at Athens High School. The Wolves advanced with a really, really nice win over, and again, I saw Hawkins up close. They were a legit basketball team, well-rounded, very good basketball team. San Augustine comes away in that regional final with a 55-53 win over the Hawks. And so they are advancing to the regional final to play a Hearn team that's 30-7 on the year. The other one here, of course, and we followed their girls, the boys from Martins Mill improved to 33-4 with a big win over Chireno on Friday night. They will be taking on Mumford in the 2A D2 Region 3 final. That game being played tonight at 7 o'clock at China Spring High School. So good luck to both of those teams. The only other team that we watched in the regional final was a little bit of a surprise to me, Matt. Dallas Madison, which knocked off Jefferson in the region semifinals last week, had to go through Liberty Ilo, and man, they just swept through East Texas here. A school from Dallas. They take a 82-76 win over the Leopards, which I know you were very impressed with them when you saw them with your own eyes there at Marshall.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about the fact that Dallas Madison was coming into that game ranked number 1 in the Class 3A according to the UIL rankings. And as we've said, you always wonder, okay, how much do you really know about it? Apparently they knew. Dallas Madison's apparently really, really good. That looked like a pretty competitive game based on the score. I didn't get to watch it, but great season for Liberty Ilo nonetheless. And you're right about, I want to just say a moment about San Augustine. That was a great win over Hawkins, and I've seen some highlights of that. That was a fascinating game to watch. You got to see some high-level basketball if you went to that game, but congrats to the Wolves for that victory.
Looking at some Tuesday baseball games going around our area here. If the weather holds off, supposed to have a little bit of rain in the forecast. Most of the tournament action, at least on Saturday, got wiped out around here with the rain that came through. But I did highlight some games here I wanted to talk about here on the podcast this morning as we, again, return to district play across our area. For the most part, some districts haven't started yet. But in 10-5A, the Hallsville Bobcats will be playing their district opener as they go on the road to play a Texas High team that is 8-2-2 with already a district win under their belt. So the Bobcats will be going on the road for their district opener against the Texas High team. That's always tough to beat up there in Texarkana. I don't care what kind of team they have. It's a tough place to play. But Matt, the Bobcats played 4 tournament games here at the Reich Builders Classic in Hallsville, their annual tournament that they put on. They outscored their 4 opponents 27-9. And those were pretty good opponents there from Louisville, Longview, Liberty Ilo, and Lindale. Got outscored 27-9. So Hallsville talking about turning a corner, might be peaking at the right time here as they get ready to start their district slate.
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. And you're right about Texarkana. First game, I think the first game I ever broadcasted, first baseball game for KMHT was at Texarkana. They're always a good program. It's
beautiful facilities up there, man. They've got college facilities up there, particularly around their high school, right, with their baseball and softball and things like that.
Yeah, it's really neat, and so that we'll see how, Hallsville always one of the favorites in the district. Of course, having Lufkin in the district and White House, I got to see them firsthand. They look pretty good. But that'll be a good test right there, right out of the gate, because Hallsville was off in their first district game to see if they can kind of put their stamp and assert themselves early on.
Big game in 14 3A with a couple of teams who have 11 wins on the season. You got Hooks, which will be playing their first district game. They'll be on the road at Liberty Ilo, which is 11-5-1. Again, these ties, man, are messing up a baseball record for sure. But the Leopards are 1-0. They did win their district opener. So you got two teams there that are pretty good and facing each other again on Tuesday night there just outside Texarkana at Liberty Ilo. 16 3A, this was a good one that jumped out to me. Tatum, again, looking to start their district play. They're 10-4 on the season, will be on the road at ARP, which is actually 0-1 with a 10-2 mark overall. They lost their district opener last Tuesday, Matt, to Troop 14-6. And so you got ARP with 10 wins on the year out of 12 games played. They're 0-1 in district, looking to not go 0-2. So Tatum's going in there with a nice 10-4 mark on the year. That'd be a pretty interesting ball game here in the early part of the district.
Yeah, curious to see how that one goes. Tatum hosted a tournament this weekend. Marshall was actually competing in that. Marshall and Tatum played a really good game on Thursday night. I think Tatum won 4-3, scored late to get that win. So be curious to see how they progress. Tatum's always good in baseball.
The other game that catches my attention for tomorrow night to watch will be out of 19-2A. Of course, that's a Harrison County battle here with Harleton and Wascom opening district play against each other. The Harleton Wildcats go into this one at the 9-3 mark in the non-district schedule, while Wascom gets them at home, but they're 3-5-1 coming out of their non-district slate. So that's always a wild one there that you'll see between those 2A Harrison County teams, Harleton, Wascom, and then EF as well, mixed into that as well. So that gets started tomorrow night for both of those clubs on the baseball field.
Just give a little plug about that. Wascom did defeat Joaquin and Maud over the weekend in a tournament to kind of maybe get a little momentum going. Of course, we know Harleton, they won a state championship just a couple of years ago. So Marshall and Nacogdoches are playing tomorrow night, and the softball game's at 2:00 because both teams are on spring break. And so we're going to be able at KMHT to cover that game at 2:00. And then at 7:00, we'll have the baseball game. Brandon Smith and I will be on the call, but Tristan Lundy, who's staying busy, will be at the softball game at 2. Then he'll head out to the Wascom Harleton game to broadcast that over on the AM side Tuesday night. So we're going to have plenty of baseball and softball on for you on the Heartbeat, but love that we get to cover all those teams and love seeing teams like Wascom, Harleton, EF, Beckville that all get to play each other. I think it's cool stuff.
Softball side, some key games to watch on Tuesday. In 10-6A, the number 7 Forney Yellow Jackets, I believe, is their mascot. They come in to Longview Tuesday. Forney's actually 17-3 on the year, Matt, 2-0 in district play. The Lobos come into this game with a 9-7 overall mark. They're 0-1 in district play, looking to kind of make an early stand here in the district standings for Longview. They're coming off a really tough loss on Friday to Rockwall, in which they lost 3-2. So interesting enough, though, a top 10 team will be coming into Longview Tuesday in Forney. In 10-5A, the number 8 Hallsville Lady Cats will be on the road at Texas High. This is an early season matchup here between two teams that are really going to be vying for the district championship probably in 10-5A. Hallsville comes in 11-4-1 on the year. They're 1-0 in district play, while Texas High is 14-4 overall, and they have an even district mark at 1-1. Matt, the Lady Cats haven't played a game since ending their tournament on February the 28th. So they set out last week, did not play anything last week, and so they're returning back to action here with about probably a 10-day layoff. And of course, Texas High lost their district opener last Tuesday to White House, or rather on February the 24th to White House, 13-8. And of course, right now as they head into Tuesday action, White House and Lufkin are leading the district at 3-0.
Yeah, White House and Lufkin. We've gotten to see them firsthand. Marshall's played both of them and lost 4-3 and 3-1. So this district is going to be fun to watch. I mean, Marshall, even though they lost to both White House and Lufkin on the road, kind of said, "Hey, you better bring your A game if you're going to play us, because we've got a very competitive squad. We know what Hallsville is, the defending state runner-up. White House and Lufkin look really good. T-High, Mount Pleasant had White House on the ropes the other night before giving up a lead in the 7th inning. So it is across the board. You better lace up those cleats and be ready to play every single night in that district.
Big one going on in 16 4A. We have a top 25 matchup going on in Carthage tomorrow night, Matt. Number 10, Spring Hill comes in at 18-5 overall with a undefeated 2-0 mark in district. They'll be taking on the home team, Carthage Lady Dogs, who are ranked number 14th in the state in Class 4A. 16-5 overall. They're also 2-0. So that's a big time matchup there taking place in Carthage tomorrow night.
For sure.
The other game here to watch on the softball side as we get ready to close out our Beast Texas section today is in 16-3A. Again, going back to ARP, where Tatum and ARP are going to be playing each other. Tatum comes into that one with a 2-1 mark in district, and ARP is undefeated at 3-0. So that's another one there that Tatum is looking to not let ARP get too far out ahead in the district standings there. So that's a big one going on there.
Very good.
Okay. I want to thank again Styles Electric for sponsoring our Beast Texas segment here on the Right Team podcast. They do that every day for us, and we are very grateful for them to be one of our sponsors here on the podcast. That brings us to the back page today, which is brought to you by Right Team Services. Right Team Services helps schools, small businesses, and nonprofits turn ideas into impact through clear messaging, effective writing, and strong connections across websites and social media. When you need results but don't quite have the words to say, let Right Team Services provide the voice that you need. Learn more at rightteamservices.net about how we can help you tell your story. Okay, Matt, you got a couple of things for us here on the back page. I'm interested to find out here because you have some news about Georgia Southern.
I do, and that's kind of the one I'm honestly most excited to talk about. So I'm gonna maybe save that for last. I'll start by talking about Jason Tatum returning to the Boston Celtics not quite 10 months from his ruptured Achilles, and really didn't look as rusty as I thought he would. The Celtics have won 2 games with him, including winning at Cleveland, who was playing pretty well at that time. They sort of dominated Cleveland and controlled that game from the get-go yesterday. If he's going to be able to acclimate quickly, that is bad news for the rest of the league. Even for Oklahoma City, I mean, it's a lot of people kind of forget, I think, that Boston was the darlings of the league just a couple of years ago, and last year they were defending champs, and you know how hard it is when you're defending champs. It's just you get everybody's best shot. They're in the second round of the playoffs. Indiana's kind of got them on the ropes, and then Tatum goes down, and that finishes it off. And so, just thought that was neat. It was a neat night at the Garden there for the Celtics to see Jason Tatum coming back. But yeah, Georgia Southern, you and I talked about that Sun Belt bracket, right? Which is just a wild bracket. And we said, if you're going to win that, if you finished 11 through 14, you're going to have to win 7 games in 7 nights. Well, no one's going to do that. But if you finished 9 or 10, you were going to have to win 6 games in 6 nights. And Georgia Southern was the 10 seed. The championship is tonight. Georgia Southern's still playing. They have won 5 games in 5 nights to move into the championship game where they will face the regular season champion Troy. And I just want to put a little perspective on this because I don't know if you remember and I'm not talking about the old Big East like back in the 80s with like Patrick Ewing and Chris Mullen. I'm talking about the Big East where they were the first basketball conference to go to 16 teams. And you're talking about an elite basketball conference. This was Connecticut. This was Syracuse in its heyday with Boeheim. Louisville with Pitino was in this. You're talking about a very good Pittsburgh team, a very good Villanova team, a very good West Virginia team, Georgetown team that was very competitive. This was a high level basketball conference. And when they went to 16 teams, they were the first one to introduce this whole okay, we're going to have 9 through 16 play in round 1, and then the 4 winners will join 5 through 8, and then the 4 winners there will join 1 through 4. Well, Connecticut one year as the 9 seed in the Big East won 5 games in 5 days. Kemba Walker went on a heater. It was so funny because Connecticut was the 9 seed in the Big East tournament, and they earned a 3 seed in the national tournament. Could you imagine being the 9 seed in your conference tournament and you get a 3 seed nationally? And Connecticut just stayed hot and won the whole thing. They rolled right through it. 5 wins in 5 days to win the conference tournament. We've seen that maybe 1 or 2 times since then. We've never seen 6 games in 6 days. And Georgia Southern has a chance to do that tonight. I don't know what they're playing on, David. I don't know what they have left in the tank, but I will be tuned in and I will be rooting hard for Georgia Southern this evening.
Can't have March Madness without a Cinderella.
Yeah.
You just can't. You know, that's the drama part of it. So, yeah, I do. I don't know. America's team might be strong, but as the way you describe them, but yeah, you probably do have some fans that don't really know or follow Georgia Southern that would be rooting for them tonight, just because, again, that's the reason for the season here in March, that kind of stuff. So good stuff there as always. Well, I have here to talk about on my back page. Of course, today is a big day in the NFL. It's NFL free agent, what I call Frenzy Day. Starting here, as we are recording this, of course, when we drop this, it's already going to be underway. But we're about an hour or so away from the official start of what they call legal tampering in the NFL. You can't sign your contract or make it official until Wednesday, but they give you this 48-hour period to go ahead and agree to deals. I never have really understood the reasoning behind the timing of that. But anyway. And, of course, the question I have here under NFL free agent Frenzy Day is, will the Cowboys or won't they? I do want to give some props and some credit. I have been a big critic on this show of Dallas and Jerry Jones and the way they run their franchise for the last 30 years. But I do want to give them some credit for resisting the temptation to overpay for Max Crosby.
Yeah.
Based on what you hear, again, nothing's official because it'll never be announced, but the Cowboys allegedly offered their number 12 pick in the draft, their first round pick this year, a second round pick next year, and Osa Odigizua to the Raiders for Max Crosby. And of course, the Ravens stepped up and ultimately won that bidding by adding a second first round pick. So I believe that was first of all, it was a more than fair offer. Dallas stood on it and kept their 2 number ones, which I think is critical to this offseason for them. Yeah. And already today, as we've been recording this, it's been announced that they have made a trade for Rashawn Gary of the Green Bay Packers for I believe a 4th round draft pick, if I'm reading it right here, next year's 4th round draft pick. Bringing in a guy who has had as much as 14 sacks in a season recently, just from a 3 years ago, actually. To pair him there, again, with a former coach that he's had, Christian Parker, and their new pass rush specialist coach. I believe his name is Brandon Jones. So that's the first move officially here before the actual free agent tampering period begins in an hour or so. The Cowboys moving some pieces around the board and getting ready and getting it through a trade and having to give up a 4th round pick next year. So I think that's well worth the risk. And if you will look at that, of course, coming from the Packers, the Cowboys have received 2 first-round picks, Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary, and they gave up, of course, Micah Parsons and a 4th round draft pick. That's a pretty good trade if you put it all together, right, over the last year with the Packers. So it makes me feel even better about the Micah Parsons deal.
Yeah, I agree with that. Does it make you feel weird to be applauding some of the moves they've made? Does that feel strange to you?
Look, I mean, I know I talk tough sometimes, but I really am wanting them to just be competitive. I mean, try this time of year. I don't really care if you fall on your face with your signings. Just make it exciting and keep us engaged and be a part of the process. And not wait for your rookies that you draft to be the biggest impact that you have going into next season. I fully expect that 11 o'clock they'll announce that they've re-signed their deep snapper. They've already put the tender on Brandon Aubrey, which is going to make him, I think the third highest paid kicker rather than the top, but if he doesn't sign a deal, of course, what he's asking for is ludicrous. I'm not paying $10 million to a kicker. I don't care if he can kick 100-yard field goals.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. But yeah, so the Cowboys are off and running as are most of everyone in the NFL. Again, moving pieces around. They have restructured Terrence Steele's contract, which basically frees up about $13 million on their salary cap, which again, that's what they're doing right now, trying to get ready for these upcoming, hopefully big free agent spending spree. And look, this is people saying, well, you need to go, this is why you get free agents to improve your team. No, you get free agents so you can go into the draft and not be, you can take best player available rather than, having to fill needs at number 12 and 20 where you might reach because you have to fill a spot on your roster. This is what free agency in the NFL is about. It's about filling your team out to where you can go into the draft and not feel like you have to draft a certain position when your time's on the clock. So good start to the day for the Cowboys, and we'll be anxiously watching that as the day progresses.
Yeah.
And Matt, I don't know, did you get to watch while you were doing all your basketball coverage, did you get to watch any of the World Baseball Classic this week?
I saw highlights. I've rewatched Schwarber's at bat multiple times. That was fun.
Team USA is flexing its muscle. Of course, they're the favorites in the tournament, along with Japan, probably. Japan is the defending champion. But they flex their muscle in a somewhat weak pairing and bracket that they're in, grouping. They do get to play their probably toughest of pool play tonight when they play Mexico, which is also 2-0 and rolling through their first couple of games. The Americans will be throwing out Paul Skeens, I believe, to start tonight. So that's a pretty good starter for that. But, man, as I've watched the games over the weekend and the highlights, there's so much drama. There's been walk-offs. There's been excitement. It kind of has a feel of an Olympic event / World Cup to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really big into the World Cup per se, but I've watched enough to see the excitement and the drama that goes in with that. And I kind of feel that right now with baseball, which, again, it's amazing to me that this is no longer an Olympic sport with this kind of support.
Yeah, it really is.
Packed out ballparks and it's just an extension of the Olympics here. And it kind of brought me up to this question I wanted to present to you to see what you thought about it. With everything I'm watching here, is maybe baseball the world's second most popular sport? I know technically around the world it's soccer, right? Is
right.
The U.S. is the world's most popular sport. But when you watch what the World Baseball Classic is bringing, I think it's conceivable to say that baseball could make an argument that is the world's second most popular sport while maybe here at home, maybe being the third, some areas maybe the fourth, right?
Yeah.
And we invented baseball.
I know
what has happened to the game, and we've talked about that, but it's no longer, of course, the NFL has just outdistanced it. It's not even with the same zip code.
No.
And in many areas, the NBA is considered more popular. Particularly among young people. And with the rise in hockey and the recent gold medal, you'd have to say that has a chance of, at least on a popularity standpoint, matching baseball, particularly with what's about to happen maybe here in the next year or so when they shut everything down. So, I don't know. I think it's what do you think about that? Just off the top of your head about maybe it being the world's second most popular sport, but certainly not here at home.
Yeah, I would agree. It is wildly popular over in Japan. You get into the Caribbean countries and Central America, very, very popular. I don't know about Europe, although there is, I will say, a former Marshall High School player who was raised in our church, Jonathan Marshall, who played professionally for many years in Germany. So I know there is some level of interest in Europe as well. But just the sheer volume of players from the Caribbean and from Japan that are coming over to play in Major League Baseball would let you know that, and not only coming over, but they're in many cases doing well, in some cases dominating Major League Baseball. I mean, you don't have a question, right, as to who the most dominant player in Major League Baseball is right now,
No.
and he's from Japan. So I feel like
I
that
don't
is
think
a
he's worth what he makes from a salary
well. Oh,
standpoint.
sure.
Very
I don't
few
know if
are.
anyone is, but I think you're exactly right. I don't think that's. I have no questions about that assertion. I would put baseball number 2.
That brings us to the portion of today's segment that we call This Date in Sports History, in which we highlight some key moments in the history of sports, notable events, birthdays, and deaths of some of the greatest names and moments in sports history. Nothing really to talk about today from as far as events or deaths, thankfully, but we do have a few birthdays of note that I wanted to make mention of here. Do you know who Bobby Fischer is?
Yes, I do.
Do you consider chess to be a sport?
Um,
Well, it is widely considered to be a sport.
yeah,
Get you
I
on
consider
on
it
that
to be I hear sport and I feel like I need to have some sort of physical activity involved with it. So,
Not just your brain.
but yeah, in no way am I putting down what chess is. It's a high IQ activity for sure.
Well, I tease it, and I got in trouble several years ago writing a column about this in my newspaper days about what I consider to be a true sport, and pretty much it revolves around being must have a ball involved and not be judged. Right, it has to be a clear winner based on competition, and I made some folks a little bit upset with me with that opinion, but I still think that way.
I don't 100% agree with that because I think track is a sport and there's no ball. But
well, track is you're racing against time or against someone else for the most part, right? I mean, there's something that can be measured and that you win the competition. I would agree also that is a sport. But anyway, we won't get into that too deep again because I want our podcast to keep growing a little bit, not turn people off. Some of those opinions you keep to yourself, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Anyway, Bobby Fischer was a world champion chess player back in the 70s, early 70s. Anyway, his birthday is today. He was born on this date in 1943. He passed away in 2008. But did you know that he became the youngest chess grandmaster in world history when he won the world championship at the age of 15 in 1958? He then came back to win the 1972 World Chess Championship when he defeated Boris Spassky in the famous Cold War era match in Reykjavik. So again, right in the middle of the Cold War, we brought home a chess championship to stick it to those Soviets. Wow. He was the first American-born world chess champion. So he is credited a lot with the popularity. If there is popular, I've never played chess. I don't understand it, but it is popular in the country today. And a lot of that is given back to and credited to Bobby Fischer and his success. So today was his birthday. I know you know this guy, born on March the 9th in 1961, a former college football coach, the now deceased Mike Leach, who passed away in 2022. Of course, one of the most innovative offensive minds, one of the most innovative minds, period. Involved in football. Of course, he's credited with, he was not the architect per se of the air raid. He was more of, he took what Hal Mumme had devised and made it his own, and it has become the revolutionary part of what you see now in spread offenses, which is spread even into the NFL. A lot of that Mike Leach brought, of course, and he won 158 career games as a college head coach at places like Texas Tech, Washington State, and Mississippi State. Now, this was pre-NIL era, so to get almost 160 career wins at those three spots, you're a pretty good football coach. Of course, in 2008, it's an infamous in Longhorn history when Texas Tech went 11-1, finished number 2 in the national rankings in 2008. That's the best season in program history. A year later, of course, was the big catch at the end by Michael Crabtree out in Lubbock, of course. Sure, your wife will remember that as well. Anyway, kept Texas from competing for a national championship that year. So I may have actually been 2008. I said 2000.
It was,
But
yeah.
it was 2008 because they did play for it the next year. But anyway, I never met Mike Leach. Of course, when he was at Tech, I hated him. He kind of left there with an inauspicious exit, if you remember.
Yeah.
Crossways with administration and some things that he did there, allegedly. Resurrected his career at Washington State and then really became a national treasure when he went to Mississippi State. Man, I'm just telling you, when you're down and you feel like you need a laugh, go pull up some old Mike Leach quotes and video. He can lift you up with some of the stories that he tells. Just a very, very intelligent individual, and the world is a lesser place when we lost him. So,
yeah, we have a great affinity for him in our family because he was the coach that my wife remembers so much and associates with so much of her fandom of Texas Tech. And I mean, really, you're not kidding, highly intelligent. I mean, this was a guy with a law degree, right? I mean,
he knew everything about world history, the history of football, science. He was into everything, man. And he was a genius.
Yeah.
He really was.
The fact that he just was, like, the places he went just fit. He's in major conferences and he's able to compete for conference championships in those major conferences at the places that are kind of the outcasts of those conferences. Not really outcasts, but just outliers. They're not, you think of the old Pac-12, you're thinking of the LA schools, right? That's what you're thinking of. You're thinking of the SEC. You're thinking of the heart of Louisiana, Alabama, or going Florida, Georgia. You're thinking of the Big 12. You're going Texas and Oklahoma, and he's out here competing with those teams in places like Pullman, Washington, Lubbock, Texas, and Starkville, Mississippi. It was really impressive.
Winning big games doing it.
Yeah.
Again, sad to see him leave. College football misses him for sure. So happy birthday posthumously here to Coach Mike Leach. And then the final one here today, born on March the 9th of 1965, the Boz, Brian Bosworth, who was a college football Hall of Fame linebacker at Oklahoma in the late 80s or in the mid 80s. Won the Butkus Award actually in 85 and 86, back-to-back years as the nation's top linebacker. Kind of fizzled in the NFL. I mean, his career was over when he got truck sticked by Bo Jackson up there in Seattle. I don't remember that. Did lead the Sooners to the 85 national championship under Barry Switzer, and again was drafted by the Seahawks in the 87 supplemental draft. Didn't last long in the NFL. Actually has now gone into acting and kind of turned his image around. And of course we knew it at the time. He was on steroids and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But he did carve out. He was the early form of what we'd probably be Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football here in our era. So, but anyway, happy birthday to the Boz. He turned 61 years old today.
Wow.
Final word of the day on today's Right Team podcast from the press box. This comes from Proverbs 12:25, and it says, anxiety in a person's heart weighs it down, but a good word cheers it up. Folks, worry has a way of weighing us down, but a kind word can certainly change someone's whole day. Never underestimate the power of encouragement that someone may need in your life today. Important to keep in mind as we go about our Monday. Well, he's Matt. I'm David, and we thank all of you Right Teamers out there for listening here in East Texas and beyond. Have a magnificent Monday, everybody. A free agent frenzy in the NFL, and we'll be back tomorrow for another jam-packed episode of From the Press Box here on the Right Team podcast. Until then, as always, keep writing your story.
The college you choose plays a defining role in what you believe, how you think, and who you become. With over 45 undergraduate programs and 14 graduate programs, East Texas Baptist University offers a transformational, Christ-centered educational experience that challenges students in mind, body, and spirit. 99% of students attending ETBU receive some form of financial aid, making opportunity accessible and affordable at ETBU. Join the Tiger family. It's not too late. Apply today at etbu.edu/apply.
This episode of the Right Team Podcast is also brought to you by Stiles Electric. For over 25 years, Stiles Electric has been providing reliable, professional electrical installation and repair service all throughout East Texas and beyond. We specialize in industrial and commercial projects of all sizes. We are proud to be a part of our communities and schools here in East Texas. Contact us today at 903-236-2536. That's Stiles Electric, reliable, professional, and experienced.
Did you know that someone somewhere is talking about you? Yes, your school district, your business, your church, your nonprofit group is always the subject of a conversation somewhere. Maybe it's Facebook gossip, maybe it's talk around the water cooler, maybe it's written in a newspaper or a blog somewhere. At Right Team Services, we work with you to manage that conversation more effectively to give all of your stakeholders an opportunity to hear your message. We help you create a culture of transparency in your organization that makes your customers and stakeholders feel comfortable as part of the story, and as a result, will help your business or school district become a more effective, trusted member of your community. Contact me today at rightteamservices@gmail.com to learn more about how Right Team can help you tell your story.